How's it going, everybody? It's your boy Davey on everything, and welcome back to the podcast. This is episode number 11 of the solo show. Today I'm going to be telling you a story, once again, of one of my teenage jobs, and in particular, a very specific role that I played in this job. So here we go. Any of you guys that are viewers know I've worked in the thrift business for about 5 years when I was younger, from the ages of like 15 to probably like 21, I guess, right? I worked at the Value Village for 4 years, and I worked at Goodwill for 1 year. So I worked at two different Goodwill locations. One was your normal run-of-the-mill store. You could come in, buy stuff, donate stuff, whatever. The other location I worked at was kind of in the country, and it was strictly a donation center, minus we sold like books and DVDs on this little corner shelving unit. But other than that, it was pretty much a dead zone. Nobody came out there. People barely donated to the store, and I more or less just had a bunch of free time on my hands. And with that time, I would basically just like read books, watch movies, whatever, watch YouTube and shit. They had internet, they had Wi-Fi, so I could just fuck around and just hang out, especially in the wintertime. Literally nobody would come. I might get one person all night that would come to my store and donate. Okay, but what I'm here to talk about, what I want to talk about is one particular part of the job. So here in Canada, we have, and I don't know, this could be something that happens all over the world, but I know specifically this is something Canada does. We have a program for weekend jail. And weekend jail is exactly what it sounds like. Friday night, you check in to the jail. Sunday morning or Sunday afternoon, you check out, and then you go to your job Monday through Friday. It only applies for people that work and non-violent offenders. So most of the people are like DUI cases, right? Shit like that. DUI, maybe like light fraud cases, just white collar stuff, and then DUIs, right? So, and how that relates to the Goodwill was on the weekends, they had work release. So you could come, instead of going to the jail, you would come and you would work at Goodwill on the weekends. So, and you would do that for the duration of your jail time. What would happen is, Saturday morning, I would show up to the store, and so would whatever convicts were coming in to volunteer to do their work release, right? So I would let them in. I'd say, all right, boys, this is what we're doing today, da-da-da. They know the role. And what would happen is the jail would call me. So I would get a call from Maplehurst Jail in Toronto. I think it's in Milton, maybe. And they would say, okay, did so-and-so show up? And I would be like, yes. And I'll tell you this, there was never a time that I said no. Even if they didn't show up, I would just say they were there, which might have been a risky move on my part. I don't know where my liability stood in that whole thing, but I would just say yes every time. Because, most of the guys were actually pretty good guys. They were nice dudes. So I wouldn't even worry about it. I didn't want to get into any trouble or anything. So that was kind of the program. I would get guys for like a few months at a time, a few weeks at a time, whatever their stay was. And like I want to repeat that there's no violent offenders are allowed to apply for the program. So that's big. That's a big deal, right? Okay, so I remember at one particular period, I had 4 different convicts at my location. And it was during a time where, like, it was never busy, right? So a lot of the time, I would just put in VHS tapes into the TV, and we would watch movies, you know what I mean? I remember watching Valley Girls. And at this particular time, we had 4 guys, I think. One dude was an old man, and, like, I'm talking, he was in his 70s, and it's a really sad situation, but him and his wife got into business with a sketchy dude. And what ended up happening was the dude committed some fraud, stole a bunch of money, and then kind of left them holding the bag. So this dude got charged with fraud. He ended up getting charged and sentenced, and he was there weekend jail. And his wife would come, drop him off, and then he would come get picked up. One of the other guys was a young Hispanic guy from El Salvador, I believe. Really great kid. Got a DUI, and we call them Deweys in Canada. Got a DUI, and he lost his license. But from that, he had to get to work. He was taking the bus. He was a painter. So he'd have all of his painting gear on the bus. One day he made the unfortunate mistake of, he had to get to a job quick. He got in his car and he started driving. and he pulled into a parking lot, and unfortunately the cops had run his plate, realized that his license was suspended for drinking and driving. And when you get a second Dewey in that kind of period of time, especially with a suspended license, you're getting jail time. So he got his weekend jail sentence. And funny enough, Goodwill actually ended up hiring him because he was actually really good, and they didn't care that he got Dewey. The third guy was just like a drug dealer. He was a drug dealer, tall dude, kind of like a burnout kind of guy. I'm not sure what his charge was, but he was a sketchy dude, and he would always ask me if he could take stuff, like, hey, can I have this? I need pots and pans for my house. Can I grab these? Whatever. And I never told these guys that what they could and couldn't do. I really didn't care. If they wanted a haircut, go get a haircut. You want to get your groceries, go get your groceries. It really didn't seem like my responsibility to parent or mentor or be a leader to these convicts. They were there. I was there. I'm just trying to get paid and do my job. They were trying to do their weekend jail. If you wanted me to watch them, you should have gave me a badge and a gun. So the last guy in this group was a guy that was like feisty guy. He's a feisty dude. He had a bunch of charges under his belt. And the charge that got him into jail was actually an assault charge. Some dude, I don't know, I forget, the story was like some guy attacked him and the guy had his dog, and this guy like beat the shit out of the dog. And he beat the shit out of the guy, and he got charged with assault and, I don't know, animal endangerment, whatever the charges were. He ended up getting weekend jail for that. And somehow he slipped through the program, and they ended up giving him work release at Goodwill. Violent offender, history of violence, many charges, should not have been, even at weekend jail, I would imagine, definitely shouldn't have been on work release. And that guy, you could tell, like, he was a little guy, but you could tell he was a scrapper, and I never would have fucked with that guy, honestly, especially at the time. I was even smaller than I am now, and weaker than I am now. So that guy would just kind of do whatever the fuck he wanted to do. I never told him, no, you can go and do your thing. He would get his groceries every weekend. He would get a haircut every couple weekends, and, I didn't tell him shit. But he was allowed to be there with me, which I thought was crazy. And he even admitted that. He's like, I'm not really supposed to be here. Somehow I got through the system and they approved my application to be on work release, but I'm not really supposed to be there. So this like ragtag group of guys, we would sit and we would just watch VHS tapes. And I felt bad for the old guy because he kind of got fucked over. The other guys, they did their shit. And, they did their crimes for real. And, they probably deserve to be there. But yeah, so for the most part with the weekend jail guys, they were usually pretty nice guys, right? They collected donations. They didn't give a fuck about the job. They would just more or less like do the bare minimum, and they wouldn't even like, you were supposed to sort things into bins and, toys, housewares, clothing, whatever. You're supposed to sort them into bins, right? And they would just throw them in any bins they wanted for the most part, except for that old guy. That old guy, like, he took pride in the work, and he was the one that was, definitely like shouldn't have been there. But for the most part, these guys would just fuck around and sit around and go. This is like 2012-ish. So like we didn't even have like really good smartphones or anything. You kind of just had to twiddle your thumbs and watch whatever tapes we had is kind of what we had to watch. So Valley Girl, Speed, whatever, The Mummy, just movies from like 2006. Sorry, not even older than that. Movies from the 90s, early 2000s. That's the kind of movies we were able to watch. And, I really never had any problems with any of the guys that would come for weekend jail. I don't even remember most of them. Most of them were like, usually I would get like one guy at a time. But some, that particular group, I got 4 of them, which seemed crazy to me. They outnumbered me. If they wanted to take me hostage and hold me for ransom, they could have. But they didn't, and they just did their shit, and then they went, they finished their weekend jail, and they would go about their life, and I would never see them again. But I'll tell you that working at doing the work release program at Goodwill was definitely a lot better than being at weekend jail. But from the sounds of it, because the one guy kind of explained it to me, when he was in weekend jail or initially, it was kind of just like a big gymnasium with bunks, and you could like play basketball and hang out, and you would serve your time on a bunk bed. And like I said, none of these people are violent offenders, so you wouldn't really have to worry about your safety too much, I don't think. You were more or less just hanging out and killing time until it was time to go back to home and go back to work. But yeah, I remember telling people like when I was doing that, or like even after the time I was doing that, like, hey, like I got the weekend jail convicts coming in this weekend, blah blah blah, and people were just like shocked, like what the hell kind of shit is this? Like why do we have weekend jail, and why are they then working with you at Goodwill? You know what I mean? And I was by myself. Like there was no other employees at any time. If you were on shift, you might have like an hour overlap. But most of the time, every other shift, for the rest of the shift, you were just by yourself. So, I was just there, left alone, with all the convicts. And then, Saturday mornings, the truck would get delivered. These guys would help me load the truck, unload the truck, give me fresh bins, fresh equipment. And then they would, and that was pretty much the role. So, I have lots of funny stories from that time at the donation center. Definitely some like regular characters come in, and you're probably wondering like, well, what regular characters? Because David, you just said that they only sell books and CDs. Like, who's coming there every day? You would be like genuinely surprised about some of the people that would come every day. Like, listen, just to get off track here a little bit, we would have one guy, I called him Portuguese Cowboy. This guy would come in with a cowboy hat and the belt buckle, and this is like, yes, this plaza is almost in the country, but we're living in the city, and the city I live in, it's actually where I live now. The city that the Goodwill is the city I live in now. It's it's the city, right? It's not a huge city, but it's a city, and you wouldn't expect to see Portuguese cowboys rolling around, but there's a lot of Portuguese people. This guy would come in all the time, and he would make you food, like he'd make dishes of food. And he was this like almost delusional guy because he had all these like grand illusions that he would participate in. Like one, he was like a master world-class chef. Two, he would bring in, he told me he was like a professional artist. And he would bring in like this like book of like pictures that he had. And they were like of horses and cowboys and whatever else. But there was a bunch of them where you could see the watermark from the actual website or the actual artist, and he would try and pass them off as his art. Maybe he had bad eyes, or he didn't realize that watermark was there, but it was very obvious that he didn't make these paintings or these pictures, right? He would also, like I said, he'd bring dishes of food, and he would bring them and this is sad, and like you guys are gonna be like, oh, that's such a waste, but I can't take food from a complete stranger and then consume it. So even when my boss would get food, she would just have to get rid of it because we don't know what he put in that food. Like, he's a weird guy to begin with, and we don't know what shit he put in that food. So we would take the food, be like, oh, thank you so much. We'll bring you back the container. And then you'd have to dump the food and clean the container and then give him back the container and pretend that it was like the best thing ever that you ever ate, right? And he had a wife, and she always looked very, very nervous. She looked very, very like... She never spoke. She always looked very nervous, and it was a weird situation to say the least. And he would come in like all the time, and I would dread him coming in because he would stand there and he would just brag about how amazing he was for like probably like 45 minutes sometimes, an hour sometimes, and it was just like it gets old, and you don't know this guy, and he never asked you about your life. He didn't actually try to have a conversation with you. He would just like go off about how great he is, But yeah, man, he would come in and he wouldn't even, maybe he would look at a book or two sometimes. I don't know if he ever bought anything. It was a cash only situation too. So I don't know if the guy ever bought anything. He just wanted to talk to someone, to brag to someone, right? But he would come in when the convicts were there. And I think at those times, like on the Saturday, Sunday, he wouldn't stick around long because, he was just trying, he was just trying to talk to like me specifically, or my boss, or like the regular employees. He didn't really care to talk to the convicts. So, just one of the many characters that would come into that Goodwill location for seemingly absolutely no reason. But that was that was an awesome job. Like, I had this old Apple computer. It was not a MacBook. It was called Apple Book or something. It was like an old Apple laptop, and I would download books on them and shit, and I would watch YouTube on it, and I would just read books on my laptop, and I would really slowly watch YouTube because A, it was an old ass computer even for the time, and B, the Wi-Fi at the store was pretty shit. So I would just press play or press pause and let the videos buffer, and then I could watch the videos. You know what I mean? It was like some ghetto ass shit, but it was a great job, and I didn't really have to do a whole lot, and there was nobody there, so I would like, work on stuff or just read and just try to stay productive, you know what I mean? Especially in those cold winter nights when nobody was coming out to donate. I could just sit there and just kind of just be to myself and, maybe learn some shit or read some shit or whatever, or just watch dumb videos, you know what I mean? But I remember at the time I was trying to learn skills because I was kind of on the cusp of trying to get into a big boy job. So I was trying to learn skills just on the internet watching videos, man. I would just sit there and watch like how to frame a basement, how to put in a window, how to insulate a place, how to do, I'd watch like a lot of construction videos because I was trying to get into construction. So I was just trying to learn these like basic skills. So I had these things in my head if I ever had to go do them, which, I did a lot, kind of after that time I ended up really, I got into plumbing, but I also was doing a lot of renovations and just jobs and side jobs and stuff. So that knowledge actually ended up coming in handy. I wasn't totally blind. But yeah, what a great job I had there, guys. I preferred working there, even though the other store was much closer to my house. I had to like work with it was at the store location, and I worked donations in the back, and it was still a cool job, but I had to like work with people, and there's managers and supervisors and all this other shit. So it wasn't my preference. I didn't mind driving a little bit farther so that I could come and just hang out at the store, right? It was definitely a cool time in my life. But yeah, guys, that is the story about the weekend jail release program at Goodwill, thrift stores, and from the people at the jail, and some of the people that I met, some of the characters that I met. One day I'll go into some more detail about some of the other people that came through the place, but just a good general idea of what's happening with that. And it was like a very interesting time in my life. And looking back, like I was just I felt really trapped in that job. I felt like I was a bum because I could have been doing bigger, better things. And I was like, I graduated college and all this stuff, and I was just I felt like I needed more, and I didn't really appreciate, the time for what it was then. So looking back though, very glad I had that job. So alrighty, guys, that is the end of episode number 11 of the solo show. If you like this story, please like, comment, and subscribe for more. I got more episodes coming. Go check out some of the full episodes. I got an interview with a guy that was in a sex cult. I have a interview with a guy that grew up dirt poor in Nova Scotia. I got all kinds of like really good episodes, guys. So go check them out. And until next time, guys, I'm Davey on everything. Thank you so much for coming, and we will see you next time.
Big cheese, no design on my jacket. Work hard, now I'm changing my bracket. Talk tough, we ain't in that racket. Guys came in, you know how to stack it. Don't take it wrong, but I'ma need my ends though. I got tigers on my chest like Kenzo. Rail came, yeah, he putting that Benz though. Carol's here, man, you know he stay 10 toes. Big dog, man, you know I ain't worried. Bent up, so I'm talking real slurry. Got a blast, bro, I'm always in a hurry. Big Drake, shooting dirty like Curry. Take a yerky, ain't know he stay passed up. You don't catch him late night, do you ass up? No, real, how to put an E-class up. They like, X nigga, how you take the fast route? 2018, it was me and Big